Coming up, it's that episode that you've been waiting for patiently at the edge of your seat. It's our Halloween Horror Nights episode where we're finally going to go over our experience at Halloween Horror Nights. Very, very exciting. Just get ready because it's happening. From the Bob Varley studio in Orlando, Florida, this is the Universal edition of The Diz Unplugged. This is episode 232 of the Diz Unplugged Universal Edition. The Diz Unplugged Universal Edition is brought to you by Dreams Unlimited Travel, experts at helping you plan the perfect Universal vacation. Visit them on the web at www.dreamsunlimitedtravel.com. The Diz Unplugged Universal Edition is also brought to you by DizBoards.com. If you're looking for even more information to help you plan your Universal Orlando vacation, head over to DizBoards.com and join the discussion today. Hello, everyone. Welcome to this week's episode of the Diz Unplugged Universal Edition. I am your host, Craig Williams. Today, I am joined alongside by my co-host, Ryno Clavin.
Hello.
Hello. Hey, we've got a humdinger of an episode for you, one that I'm super excited about, and that is our Halloween Horror Nights extravaganza of sorts. You might even call it that if you would want to. So we went to Halloween Horror Nights this past weekend, and we're very sad that we're missing out on it tonight and Sunday night. But you know what? Things come up, things happen that keep you from attending it. But at the same time, there are brighter pastures around there. We will be back to Halloween Horror Nights the following week, but we got a good chunk of it done the very first weekend. So of course, on opening night, we were great. We were lucky enough. We were fortunate enough to be invited out by Universal for an RIP tour, so the VIP guided tour as part of the media event. So we got the full 9 yards with it. We got a bunch of food that was happening during the first portion of our little media event, which I didn't realize at the time. I didn't put two and two together. I'd been paying attention during team member preview on that Wednesday. I was looking at all the menus from the Starcourt Mall, and I was like, okay, that's something I want to try. That's something I want to try. But I didn't really it didn't resonate with me then as we were eating a lot of the food at our media event, that was all the food that they're serving at Starcourt Mall.
Yeah, when I went the next night to go and check out what they were offering at the different places, I was like, oh, we had that bao bun and we had that pot sticker. I'm like, okay.
Yeah, and the street corn that was there as well, too. It was in nachos, it was all right there. And it didn't dawn on me at the time. Granted, we wouldn't have reviewed it anyways in that setting, as we don't review stuff like that during media events, just because it's a different type of presentation, and we're not paying for it, so there's no point on reviewing that. So our event started off with that, and then that led into, plus a couple drinks here and there, and then that leads into doing an RIP tour of the houses, plus the Marathon of Mayhem, as well as viewing Academy of Villains. So, but it just, besides going to it for that side too, I know I shouldn't have to say this, but I will just preface it too. Ryno and I, like many people in Orlando, we are also frequent Fear pass holders. So I know you went back on, that was
Saturday.
Fridays.
I went Saturday.
Yeah, you went Saturday. I went on Sunday. And so we attend very regularly throughout the season. And this is actually, I will say, in terms of what we say during these periods, a lot of times we'll get flack and criticism saying, okay, well, you're going out and doing all these reviews, but if your bosses are paying for that and such anyways, where does it matter? One thing I can adamantly say without any hesitation is that for Halloween Horror Nights, both Ryno and I pay for our own frequent Fear passes out of pocket, and it's something that we love that much that it's not something that gets covered by for work, because we get to go for media and we get a ticket with our premiere pass. Mm-hmm. So anything beyond that is, if we want to do it, kind of like the same thing goes with the Halloween parties at at Walt Disney World. If we want to go to those more than the couple times that we get to with work, then that's on us. So that's just how much we love this event and enjoy going year after year to it. There's no other thing I could imagine other than being a frequent Fear Pass holder. That was literally the reason I kept my job at Universal for so long, was solely for a Halloween Horror Nights ticket every time it rolled around. So like that's how important this event is to me and stuff. But anyways, let's actually talk about the event itself, because that's why you're here to watch and listen, not for my insane ramblings of, I mean, a little bit of that too, but you want to hear some information as well too. But yeah, we were able to experience all the houses on the first night, like I said, plus the 2 shows. And then when I went back on Sunday night, I'm gonna have to ask Ryno again to remind me and refresh me. But I know for me personally, my time there on Sunday night, I was able to experience part of Marathon of Mayhem, and I'm not going to go into why I didn't view the full show of that, but I saw parts of that show. And then I was able to do every single house with the exception of Nightingale's Blood Pit, and that was out of my own choosing. And then I also, I didn't do Academy of Villains, but I was able to basically knock out everything. So these feelings that we're going to talk about, it's not with that first snapshot judgment on it.
I was not able to do all of the houses again on Saturday. It was too busy.
But you got a little bit done, right?
Yeah, I did stay and Scream. I did 5 of the houses again.
Okay, that's a good
And I
chunk.
saw the Mayhem, the show, too. But that's also, I didn't stay till 1. I left at like 11:30 or something. So
Yeah,
but it was busy on Saturday.
and that's the opposite. I was there for a little while with friends at the start of the event, and we just got lucky. Sunday ended up being a super slow night. We got in, and Kylie and I were going to go to Killer Clowns from Outer Space because it was only 15 minutes. And then our friends called and said, okay, well, we're just about to go into Ghostbusters. Do you want to do that? Like, how long is it? 45 minutes. It's like, oh, that's pretty much at the cusp of what I think I would be willing to wait for Ghostbusters. And yeah, why not do it and see what happens? And it ended up only being a 30-minute line.
Nice.
Marked it. And I don't think I saw it go back over 40 minutes the rest of the night on Sunday.
That must have been really slow then, because the night I was doing it was like every time you'd get on a line, whatever it said, it doubled by the time you got into it. So it was crazy. And when I left, nothing was under 45 minutes. So
yeah, well, we did that, and then we went back over to Killer Clowns, and that said it was like a 25-minute wait. It ended up only being a 10-minute wait. And the only thing I was staying away from all night was, we did those 2, and then Kylie needed to go home. So I took her home, and then I was sitting at home, and I'm like, should I go back? Because I need to do some work, and I needed to film Scare Zones and Marathon of Mayhem. And I was like, maybe I'll just be lazy for once in my life and wait. Because I was at Epcot all Saturday night documenting the fountain and other stuff that I was like...
But we're going to be in California, so we're missing a whole weekend out of the event.
Well, and that's where I was like, okay, I'll go back. But then I was like, even still putting on my shoes, I'm like, I don't want to go back. I opened up the app. Stranger Things was an 85-minute wait, and everything else was 25 minutes or under. I think Ghostbusters was 40. And most of them were saying 10 or 15 minutes. And so I'm like, okay. It's clearly, I was like, okay, I'll go over, and got over, and basically, I did. The only thing I waited on Stranger Things was my final one. I got in line right at 1:00. Right at the last second. I was like within the last 10 people that they let in before they did their final call. And with that line, I think I waited 15 minutes for it. But everything else, I either walked right in or I was like a 5-minute wait. So it was definitely Sunday, because I was watching all night Saturday, watching the wait times and stuff. And I'm like, I still hadn't bought my pass at that point, and after seeing the wait times on Friday night and the wait times at Saturday, I was like, I'm gonna have to do the express pass. And then I looked at my bank account, and I was like, there is no way I can justify this right now. So I'm going non-express, and I'm still happy with that. But I think that's just a testament. And the long story with that wrapping around was definitely with Halloween Horror Nights. It's important to remember that during these first couple weeks in September, you can definitely get a lot done if you're lucky. If you can go on, it changes every year, I feel like. So we'll give the advice like go on that Wednesday, Thursdays, or Sunday nights. Those are the slower. Stay away from Friday, Saturday, and then those end up being super busy, and Friday and Saturday's calmer, and then it swips around because everyone realizes the pattern and then does opposite. But September, it's always recommended go anytime during that, and you're going to see these waits where you can literally get everything done in one night if you're smart and you're paying attention to the wait times. And as you get closer to Halloween, just expect it to get busier and busier, and it will. And it'll get insane, but and that's when you have to start thinking about Express Pass and such, and it could be more beneficial to you. But I guess part of the question we have to look at with this is this year worth attending? So just to recap you on that, this year it's a very loose 80s theme to Halloween Horror Nights, as seen with some of the choices they've made in terms of the scare zones and the houses. So we all know like Stranger Things is a part of this event. Killer Clowns from Outer Space has returned. Of course, Ghostbusters. That goes without being said. Anarch-cade is just straight up 80s arcade goodness, and it's just a little. In even Monsters I always want to call it Monsters of Mayhem. The Marathon of Mayhem is about as 80s as you can get in the entire feel of that show. So that is the loose theme of it. And do you feel like you're getting the theme throughout the area?
I think it's the anarch-cade and the Marathon of Mayhem that really kind of nail that theme in. Yeah. That it's not even just it's that 80s video game-esque. Like it's trying to be like it's not like 80s VHS tapes, like which is what I felt like last year. Last year was definitely more aggressively 80s. This year it's trying to be like, oh, we're going for that like twisted Tron feel. And I think the show combined with the anarch-cade scare zone really kind of brings it all together.
Yeah.
I get it. I always think about that year where it was like Festival of the Dead or something like that. And that year I was like, I don't understand this theme at all. There's literally no theme. They just have this one character with the feathers.
Yeah, it was. Themes have been slightly tough after the 25th anniversary when that was,
I don't always need a whole theme, though.
No, you don't need a theme. The problem was, I feel like when they were doing Walking Dead, it's the theme. That kind of got ingrained. And then after that, having like a stellar year with 25 and having Jack be the main host of that, but then also in like the scare zones, bringing back other Horror Nights icons and stuff, that got ingrained again. And then they followed it up with Chance, which that was where, it felt like they made a lot of cuts right at the end to kind of to make her not be the icon of the event, but still not. It didn't quite necessarily feel like it was still super themed. And then in the past 2 years since, so 27 and 28, it's been very loose themed. And this is another one that's very loose themed. But like you said, I think just having Marathon of Mayhem in there.
Well, I think next year will be a huge year too, because it's 30th anniversary. I'm sure they'll do something big for that one too.
Yeah, but the atmosphere of the event, I feel like it's it connects with me. Whether or not when you're in the scare zones, that will be a question we'll answer later on in the show.
There's a lot that works really well, and then the stuff that isn't quite cohesive is very clearly not cohesive, I guess. But like when you're walking through the park as a whole, like they have nailed down this aesthetic that they're here. I don't know if you can see that. So this is my like mug. If you're watching this, is the mug that has the print of the event on it. Like this is it's got Stranger Things, Killer Clowns, Ghostbusters, and Monsters on it. All the IPs, and it's all this purple and green and neon. And that is very present everywhere in the park. And I am actually kind of dumbfounded when I walk around. Mel's Diane is always that neon pink, but then like they've got all the smoke machines going everywhere and the lighting everywhere. It's actually kind of beautiful how it's very photo-esque anywhere you are in the entire park. Like it's one of those where I'm like, it looks like it could easily be the album cover of any sort of like 80s, I don't know, band or something like that. But yeah.
Yeah.
I think they did a really, really good job of that, to the point where I'm like, it really, I always talk about parks have a different life night and day, but this is just something where I'm like, man, this is one of those, I feel like a very underrated aspect of this event that they've done, like the lighting coordinators or whatever.
Yeah.
I think that's a really very present and very well done part of this event.
Yeah, I mean, it is something that you see it definitely during Halloween Horror Nights, even to an extent during Universal Mardi Gras, how they're able to, even though that's contained in one small area where this is park wide, like it's cool when you see those changes being made. I'm not saying that they don't happen at Walt Disney World, but like with Halloween Horror Nights, it truly is
I don't
on
think it
another
happens
level.
Like this. Yeah. Not something like, I know Disney does transform their parks. I'm not knocking them, but I was thinking about it where I'm like, there's not really an experience it's so like this everywhere in the park. Everywhere you go, I can kind of see that feel and that sound, and this is the first year that I've really been like, it wasn't just like Marilyn Manson music playing. It was like, oh, this music matches this fog and the light and the thing, so it all kind of electrifies you, and you're like, oh, this is cool.
And there's very little room to breathe, so that's a good point too. If you're not into this type of event, I mean, you have basically a safe zone in the Wizarding World of Harry Potter.
Yeah.
And
then I think there's like a dead zone area from the end of like where the Starbucks is.
In front of like Transformers and stuff. That part of New York. The other part of New York, obviously, is one of the scare zones, Zombieland. There's a little bit of a breathing area in front of Fast and Furious Supercharged, but not by the exit because there's a scare zone there.
No. Yeah.
There's in front of Men in Black. You have a little bit of safety, and there's these little pockets of it, but it's and this isn't a surprise for anyone who's been attending the event. It's not like this is different than any other year. There's scare zones all around and pretty much all in the same places, only the one minor moving like last year they had Killer Clowns as a scare zone in that section in New York, and they didn't utilize San Francisco, but now it's back to the classic,
other way around,
which I prefer. I as much as I enjoyed it being Killer Clowns where it was, to me, San Francisco is wasted space if it's not utilizing a scare zone in there. And that's just my thoughts on it.
Who knows? Next year they might have 6 scare zones because they might do New York and San Francisco.
No, the thing is, you fill that in with the roaming hordes, so the chainsaw hordes, which already occupy like the Springfield area again, and of course they used to be in front of Transformers in that part of New York when Killer Clowns wasn't there last year, so it's always easy to fill those in. So it's the atmosphere is everywhere, but I know a lot of people aren't here just to hear about the atmosphere because they've attended the event already or they're planning on it. They want to hear what we have to think about the houses, and we are obviously going to do that now, and we're going to rank ours from 10 to 1. Of course, this is opening weekend rank. Things will change and fluctuate.
I there was some where I was like, having only experienced half of them twice, I was like, oh, I can, and some of them I'm like, oh, I can see where once this is really, like some houses I went in through twice, and I'm like, I've been in a shift change both times in this house because nothing was happening. But I knew something was supposed to happen where in an area, so I was like, so I know I have to like re-experience some of them again.
I completely agree with that too. And I just want to also say with this, we are, for anyone watching this visually, if you're listening, it's different, but and I guess even listening in general, this is good to know. There will be spoilers, of course, in this. Not that many, but we're obviously going to talk about it. So if you are waiting to go to the event and you don't want to hear the details about the houses, just where we rank them, maybe I'll put in like the show notes or something where the list, I don't know. I'll put it in the comment, or I'll put it in the description on YouTube. Our ranking of the houses. That's a quick, easy place for people to see what they are. And after you attend the event, you can come back and see them. But we're gonna talk about the houses, and we're gonna be showing video of inside the houses. So if you don't want this spoiled for you, this is not the episode to watch. So I think I've made that clear enough now. Spoilers ahead. Don't watch if you don't want the houses ruined for you. So, okay, we're going to start with our list at number 10, of course. Ryno, what do you have at number 10?
I have a Nightingale Blood Pit.
Yes, Nightingale's Blood Pit. One of the houses that Ryno definitely had very low on his list that I attempted many, many times to talk him into how good it's going to be, because the first Nightingale's house was awesome. And how could this not be better? There's going to be gladiators.
Yeah, you promised me naked men and I saw none.
There was one half naked man in it. And I didn't even see him no, sorry, that's right. I was just about to say I didn't see him the second time I went through the house. I didn't see him the second time I went through the house because I didn't go through the house a second time. And it's solely because this was also my number 10 on my list. When I went on Sunday, I had the option. I could have done every single house that night, but I adamantly chose to not do Nightingales because it was that much of a disappointment when we went through. Like, the house just didn't connect at all with me. So it's like, I thought we were going to get the feel of being in ancient Rome and these creatures were coming after us. And did you ever get that impression?
No, I found this house to be completely forgettable. I don't even remember when we did it during the night. I feel like it was toward the end.
Yeah, it kind of was, yeah.
Yeah. And
it was in the last 4.
And I know we were like rushing at that point with the RIP tour because the timing was off for some reason. So I feel like I can't remember anything about the house. So that says something about it. Not like, oh, I can't remember because I was scared. I don't remember being very scared, but I also remember being like, I don't know what the story is I just walked through, compared to, especially having done this later in the night, I saw a lot of really stories. I experienced all these other houses that had stories that even when I didn't understood what was happening, I still remembered things about the house.
Yeah,
it could move. It could end up moving. I don't know, but we walked out. I think you liked it less than I even did. I was just very like, I felt like nothing had happened when I saw it.
Yeah, I basically said I don't need to go into this house again for I'll go in maybe 1 or 2 more times. It's how I felt about the vampire house last year. But that did end up growing on me a little bit more. So maybe
that was definitely better than this house.
But yeah, that still had the scenic design to it. Yeah. This to me, like, I'm not saying the designers, and this is not a criticism on what they put together. I'm not saying it's a bad design. I'm just saying for me, it's hard to walk into some of these houses this year, to walk into the details of Ghostbusters, which you know from the movie, Stranger Things, which you know from the series, or even an intricately themed original house like Yeti. And
I was going to say that's the upward battle of an original house, is it doesn't have any memory or anything to play with.
But then you can still be in a house like Yeti where it is so intricate and so detailed, and then you look at something that is very minuscule and bare bones, like Nightingale's Blood Pit, and it's just it's a night and day difference. It's disappointing. So I don't know. I will go on this house again. I will not go on this house. I will go through this house again at some point, but it's going to take me it's going to take me a little bit of time to get to again. So Ryno, where do you have on your number 9?
I have a House of 1,000 Corpses, which originally was on the bottom of my list the first time I did the ranking. But you watched the movie before you went, and you lent it to me, but I ended up having to Eli was out of town. I had to take care of the dogs and all this stuff. I ran out of time to be able to watch it, so I am still going to watch it. And I thought I would watch it again before I went in, and so I've been in twice now into this one. And even having not seen the movie, I was watching it, and I was like, this is interesting, because I was like, this is I got a Texas Chainsaw Massacre vibe from it. It reminded me of that house that we had here, and it reminded me of just that movie in general. And I was like, okay, so even though I don't really know this movie or this story, and I approach it like an original house, I still can remember things. Like I remember walking in, and you see not Captain Sparkles. What the heck is his name?
Captain Spaulding.
It's Captain Spaulding. And I remember the guy over the body with the big metal arms, and then I remember the girl cutting this other guy's head. And so there are things in this house where I'm like, okay, I don't know what was going on really, but I remember scary moments and being spooked by this weird family. And so I felt like it was telling something that I didn't understand, but at least I remembered it. That's why the night I put Nightingale so low is because there was literally nothing memorable about it. I literally can't remember anything about the house, except for like kind of the coloring of it. And then this, at least I remembered, I had remembered after the first night, and it wasn't what I remembered the second night, but yeah.
Well,
what did you
I
have
did not
on
have House of a Thousand Corpses.
Really? That's even higher up. Okay.
Yeah, well, not too much higher up. So, unfortunately, this next house is one that I know has made. It's been number one on many people's lists out there, and it's just something that the first night I thought that I was like, okay, this was actually a good house. This was better than I expected. Then when I went and thought back to it, it was the very first house we did. So I think it was just getting in the spirit of it. And then the next day I was like, I don't really remember like being blown away by it now that I'm really thinking about it. And then when I redid it on Sunday night, it's like, okay, this house has so many dull moments and so many moments where they miss the scare. It accurately portrays the movie, I believe, in a good way, but just misses on so many marks and has so many blank areas, and that's Us.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah.
Should I talk about how I feel about it now too, or no?
Well, we'll get to it when it gets on your list there, and feel free to jump in on anything that I say as I go along with it.
I want to point out, some of the houses I was in front of Craig, you can tell in the video, and then other parts of the house I went in way in front of you, or behind you, or something. Well, I was mostly in front of you, but I think this house I went in with a big space between us.
Yes, we had very different video watching back from it, but there also was a trend in the video. I got a couple more scares than you did, but the second night I didn't get, I think, more than 2 the entire house. And granted, it was close to the end of the night, but they were all still in there. It was just that it's just with that house, it's one of those ones where I think it has to be timed well. And if your timing is slightly off, you can have a chance where you go through that entire house without getting scared a single time. And I'm not saying like you have to nail me with the scare, but there was points where I went through a whole section where I constantly was seeing like Lupita Nyong'o's character go back into a room after clearly having just popped out, or her tether, even in that way, where it was where she was going back in or out, or any of, like, there was the only time I truly saw characters was when they were in a position where they were standing in the middle of a room and couldn't hide. So like they have, before you enter the house and get into it, they have the crazy man, the pier man that stands out front of the house. He was one person I saw, and then I saw Red later on when you're in the living room of their house, and she's just standing there with scissors.
You didn't see the Winston Duke character?
Nope, he was tucked away. He was tucked away. And
I only went the one time, and he was behind me.
Then when I went in the neighbor's house, the second time around, the guy was tucked back in, so he was there, but I had to physically turn and look in his little hole to see him. And then the same thing went for there's another character who, I don't know what you call them. They're closets.
So I don't know, the cubby.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Yeah, cubby. We'll call it a cubby.
Imagine everyone's hiding in little holes everywhere now.
And there's another cubby in that hole where there's 2 characters, and once again I saw both of them, but they were like tucked back in, getting ready to come out, and it happened after I had already passed, and I just kept hitting that. And
that can be frustrating.
I remember our run through the house, I thought was good. When we walked out of there, I think I even told you for like the first time, I'm like, that not only do I think I nailed the video and I got good low light video in there and everything was in focus and everything came out well, but on top of that, we also had a good amount of scares, because sometimes when we make these videos, they let us film on media night, and sometimes when we go through there, we'll go through a house and only hit like a quarter of the scares, and then it's like, okay, well, now I have to scrounge to find like background shots to put together a video to show the atmosphere of it, and that's all I have. We got lucky the entire night where we hit a good amount of scares, and this one we did the first night, but the second night when I had it where it's like you see them, but they're not actively coming out. It's tough. So that's why this one was so low on my list. Like after I did it, I was like, I would have been so disappointed if I would have waited 45 minutes, an hour in this line, which I know it had that wait on Friday and Saturday.
Yeah,
it was long.
I couldn't do it again. I only did the one time.
So for me, unless you're guaranteed like a decent amount of scares out of it, even if you're having a bad run through, like I can't put it too high on my list right now. It could change, but it might not. So what was your 7?
The Yeti. Terror of the Yukon. So I just want to say the lists from here on, for me, the only houses where I'm like, I don't even know if I like them or not, is the bottom 2. The rest I like. Like, I definitely like them. I'm not saying I dislike them in any way. This is now a preference of which ones in my card on a list, which ones do I want to go immediately to the next time I'm there. I enjoyed the Yeti one a lot. I liked that it was like you go through the ice area and everything like that. But again, it's another one of those, like, we did it the one time and I really wanted to do it again. It just, like, when I went to go get in line for it, it said 15 minutes. And when I got, because this one you go through like backstage area. When I got to where the line was, I was like, this is at least 45 minutes. The line wasn't moving at all. And so I stood and waited 10 minutes and the line hadn't moved at all. And I was like, okay, this is like a mile long still. So this is definitely nowhere close to 15 minutes. So that was the last one I attempted, I believe. And then I left, but I remember enjoying it, but again, I don't necessarily have anything distinct that I can remember about it, except for the ice. I remember the ice, and I remember being cold, and I remember liking it more. No, it is actually lower on the list than I originally had it. I guess one lower, but yeah.
Oh, I forgot to see where my old
I just
list.
pulled mine up while you were talking.
Yeah.
That's why I was like, oh, I wonder where I had everything, because I'm worried I was giving the exact same list, and I'm not.
I think I overwrote my list, so that's a shame. And I believe you had House of a Thousand Corpses definitely as
it was the last one. I had the
one.
Nightingale and the House of a Thousand Corpses switched. So
yeah, I think I deleted mine, but I know mine is pretty different from where I had everything out on my list. So I'll watch back that episode and see where my stuff was when I have a chance. But my number 8 was your thoughts on Yeti were interesting. So I will say
not many.
I will say that Yeti, the first, based on the media event night, I will agree with you. While we saw stuff in it, I wasn't blown away, but I think Yeti was one that I had very high expectations, especially after
we did it really early on too.
Yeah, it was in our first 3 houses. So, but with that too, Yeti was one that I was seeing people from Team Member Preview posting, and they were blown away by Yeti, and so I think I built that.
You built your own expectation, yeah.
I did. It's between what I thought about it and how cool I thought it was going to be, plus then hearing how many people said it was going to be amazing. I built it up, and then the first time it was like, oh, that was kind of.
Let's see, the first time I was like, oh, I enjoyed it, but I think it has a potential to go further up for me too.
I enjoyed it, but it was like, okay, well, it was good, but it's not like, I don't know if this is going to be my standout original house. It still isn't the top of the list for me for original houses.
No, me
but
neither.
I think there's a lot of promise in here. This is one that could definitely go up for me too. And
was that your number 7?
No, my number. I'm still on number 8 with mine because that was your number 8.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
My number 8 is House of a Thousand Corpses. So,
oh no, that was my number 8. Nope. Yep, Yeti was my number 8. But you asked me what number 7 was.
Oh, I did?
Sorry, yeah.
Oh,
but I knew what
bad.
you meant. I read the right one. Sorry, I just counted up weird, but yeah.
Yeah, my bad on that. My number 8 was House of a Thousand Corpses. And with that, I watched the movie. I rewatched it, like I said, because I wasn't fresh on it going in, and I want to always be fresh on a movie, at least seeing it in like the last 6 months, and so had to do it with House of a Thousand Corpses. Bought it specifically to watch for the event, hoping that I wasn't going to regret that $5 that I spent, and I did regret it. The movie is just trash. The main thing, I can't believe I must have saw it like I had to have seen it in like 2004, 2005 before I started watching The Office, because I completely forgot that Rainn Wilson was one of the main characters along with Chris Hardwick. And then Walt Goggins pops in later as one of the sheriffs. Oh, you know who he is. He's like, oh, he's a huge character actor. He was in Justified, I want to say, alongside your man from Justified.
I know Timothy Olyphant.
Yeah, but he was also in that. He was like, he's lately been on a string of hits. He started on that.
Oh, yeah. I know. I recognize his face where I'm like, he's the guy that's in everything, but you're like, I don't know that guy's name.
Well, the first thing I was going to say, because like one of the last movies he was in, he was the bad guy in Tomb Raider, the remake with Alicia Vikander. He's currently
he was in
on
Ant-Man and the Wasp.
Yes.
He was like the guy trying to steal the building. Yeah.
He was also on that. He's in right now. He was on Vice Principals with Danny McBride, and now he's on Danny McBride's newest show that's on HBO, The Righteous Gemstones, which he plays. He plays a man who is like in his 70s, and it is so absolutely funny. It is such a messed up show, like any of the Danny McBride shows, but he is hilarious in it. So Walt Goggins, great guy. So there's all these.
Oh my God, Murder, She Wrote. He was on Murder, She Wrote, the last free man in 2001. Yeah. Billy Weber.
I just listened to him on WTF, and like he's just been plugging away for years and years and years and years, and just has started to blow up recently.
Yeah, good for him.
But I completely forgot like these three. Chris Hardwick. Everyone knows him from all of the AMC afters and the Nerdist and everything. And you don't have to say anything about Rainn Wilson. I mean, Dwight Schrute, like. It kind of catches you off guard when you see these three people throughout this movie that is like a B movie in every sense. And so I appreciated the movie for that, but it was not my style. It was not my taste. It reminded me like of a crossover between Something Twisted and then like the 90s reboot of Texas Chainsaw Massacre with Matthew McConaughey and Renee Zellweger. So hated the movie, but the house, on the other hand, I did not like it the first time we went through it. Just did not care for it at all. And then the second time through, it really sunk with me. Like, it is a super detailed house. Mm-hmm. Like, there is so much to look at in it. And while I don't care for some of the... I don't care for the style of it. I don't care for that gritty, gross out attempt at horror. It is still really well done. The set designs in here are just absolutely amazing. And this is one of those houses where they're able to expose characters and keep them in the open, but just the general loudness of the house, the sense that how they turn on you so quick, it's very menacing. So there was actually there was twice where I think I actually got jump scared and I didn't even see it coming from characters wide out in the open. Just hit that timing where they turned around right at the right time on me. So I definitely it was able to impress me enough after that first time to move up on my list out of the 9 spot to number 8, but still not huge. But what's your number 7?
Killer Clowns from Outer Space. I did enjoy this house quite a bit, and it translated the same way I thought it would when I watched the movie for the first time last year to prep myself for the scare zone. I thought it was fun. I liked all the clowns in there. I thought they did a pretty job of some of the scenes from the movie, more or less. Although, like, there was like one scare I was trying to go back and look at to see what happens, and I saw it in your video today, was the clown out of the pizza boxes. Mm-hmm. But also I was like, where's the bathroom scene with the snakes in the hamper? But I can see you turn around at one point and I see the clown holding them. So I think that scene is in the house. I just don't think we were scared with it yet or something. But it's what I expected. I thought it was a fun... not fun. I mean, fun, but still had some pop out scares here and there. And, they've got the buttons in the house you can push and they do some stuff. And I think the Clownzilla thing at the very end is cool. Mm-hmm. And I think it's I like when these weird B movies, these cult classic B movies are represented. So I think it's the right type of ridiculousness that I like, that I enjoy, that still I know I could get spooked in. That's all.
Okay. No,
I'm not crazy. I like killer clowns, but I know some people go insanely crazy for it.
I understand. Like Kylie and I love that house, and even our run in it, my second run, her first, we had a lot of dull moments, and it was about 50-50, but like we love them so much that it's just like it's an IP that I really love. And I, on top of that too, I love that out front of the entrance to the house that one of the big things, they have a photo op. I don't know why lately I've been stopping myself mid-sentence to start a new sentence, but they have a photo op, and I just did it there saying that. They have a photo op of the ice cream truck where you can actually take your picture with some of the clowns. And that was one of the things I was saying leading up to this house is the tough part's going to be people loved, it was like they loved taking their photos with the clowns last year in the scare zone. It was one of the things I saw people doing most in the event was just getting their photos. I'm like, how is this going to work in the house where you can't have your camera out? People want photos. And so clearly Universal also read that loud and clear and put out the clown truck and some clowns out front of the house so you can get your photo op in. So I love that they did that, but it's a little higher on my list, but we'll get there. And when we get there, my number 7 is where you stop being my friend, because I have number 7 is Stranger Things. And that's you can sigh at me all that you want.
I am not without issue in this house this year. You know that.
Yeah, and I respect that as well too, that you do find issues with the house. My first big issue with it, as we talked about off air, is that my second run through it was very clear when I saw characters that weren't there in the first run, but then they were missing, vice versa. I don't like that they built a house where in some sections you are only getting half the experience going through. I don't know if this will change once it gets closer to Halloween and maybe they start staffing up, but like the first time we walked through the bus scene of season 2, we had Steve right before we were getting on the bus. And then once you get inside the bus, you hear Dustin's voice echoing throughout. But all we had was on top of the bus, there was a demo dog trying to get its way in. Then when I went through it the next time, there was no Steve in front of the bus before, but you could hear his voice. And then I heard Dustin's voice inside. I'm like, if they're both missing, this is going to be terrible. But now Dustin was in the house, so that made sense, or in the bus. But then the demo dog was missing from above.
Oh, that's
and
weird.
I'm like, so this entire room just lost its entire point to it. And it's
I've noticed a change in the house already, because when I went through, it was, or at least I thought, the Bob Newby part, I thought was just a mannequin with mannequins around him. And I would just watched not your video either. It was somebody else's video, and it's not a mannequin.
Yeah.
But it was a mannequin when I went through.
Yeah.
It was just a non-moving part, or like it moved a little bit, but then this time it was a person reaching and screaming.
Yeah.
And I was like, that's not what I experienced. So I wonder if they're swapping out like fake things for real things. I don't know.
Who knows with that? But I talked about this leading up to it with the decision of Stranger Things 2 and 3 being combined together. I do not like Stranger Things season 2. I thought it was such a weak trip downhill after the first one, and the third was able to bring it back up. I think it's a shame that the best set piece in the entire house is based on season 3, and yet 80% of the house is season 2.
I don't know that I agree with you on that.
You don't like Inside the Starcourt Mall?
No, I think that is good. I don't know that that's the best set piece of the house, though. Actually, that's my set piece that I have a complaint with.
If you're gonna, sorry, I'm like now we're getting heated, so I'm screwing up the switching on that. If you're gonna try to tell me that that 11 and Hopper closing.
No.
Okay.
That's not. No.
Okay, thank you. Then
I do think one of the best set pieces is from the third season part of that. I think the cabin was really good, because in the cabin I was like, when I went through, it was so many of the actors were in there at once, and they were playing so much audio from the show, and they were it was Jonathan screaming, "Nancy, shoot it!" and Nancy. God,
that is the second time
all over equipment.
See, this is why you got to stop waving your hands like that, sir.
I can't help it.
Yeah, that is the second time today that he has knocked over this cup. He is convinced that he's going to break his Horror Nights cup.
I think I shouldn't be allowed anything without a straw. Yeah. Get away from me, water. Okay, there's a little puddle over here now. When Jonathan and Nancy would be coming out, cocking the gun and shooting the gun at the scene from season 3 where it's trying to break through the roof of Hopper's cabin, but like the cabin's all ripped up in the middle of it, and you had 11 on the side, and she's holding the 2 tentacles apart, and then Nancy was in there, and then Jonathan's voice is screaming, and then it was somebody else. There was another character. I think Max was in there too.
Well, and I've seen the switch on this. It's Nancy is always in there, and 11's always in there, and then it will flip between, at least for the 2 times I've done it, it flips between Max and Will. Or not Will,
Mike?
Yes, thank you.
Yeah, okay.
Sorry.
Yeah. So
complete. I was like, and then I'm like, don't drop into it.
I remember. So. Yeah. I remember just being kind of like, oh wow, there's a lot going on in this room, and it feels like what it felt like while I was watching it. So I give it a lot of credit for that.
It's the most. Sorry.
Go ahead.
I do have to interrupt you on there. Because I think inside the mall. To me, that's the most impressive because of the sheer size and scale of it.
I'm not disagreeing with the thing in there,
but you are right. The cabin scene is the most kinetic. There is so many different things happening.
And I think that's kind of what my complaint is with the big finale of the Starcourt Mall, is that I honestly feel like they did this big giant room, and there is an amazing, I don't know what this creature is called, Mind Flayer, in there. That is huge, and it moves, and the top half moves, at least the mouth area does. And I think that's cool. And there's a character, and like Lucas is in there, and it's, if you're looking, so if the room is square, you're looking in the left third of the room and at that Mind Flayer thing. But the rest of the room to me felt like there was nothing in it. It felt like I was in a room where I only saw one quick service area with the rubble and everything, and if my eyes stayed right there, it looked great. But if I looked anywhere else in the room, I was like, what is it? What a way. It felt like it had been rushed to me, like right away, where I was like, for a scene that is supposed to be this big iconic moment in the show, I felt like, I was like, oh, I'm a little disappointed with the mall scene, because I thought the mall scene would be the one that drew them in. But this is higher up on my list than it is for you. So I did really enjoy my experience through this house.
And see, for me, with that Mind Flayer in there, that's one of the most impressive things I think they have put together. It might be simple in how they made it, but at the same time too, it's like,
I thought it was cool.
Sometimes these massive set pieces are what are the takeaways for me. Like even though Hollywood hasn't been good in years, like the Queen.
It's not the Mind Flayer I have the problem with. Yeah. It's the dressing of the rest of the room. It's the mall itself, not the Mind Flayer.
And that's a greater thought. While the cabin scene is awesome in that second half of the maze there, I also step back and wonder, and I could be completely wrong. I know no inner workings on this. I feel like season 3 was a later decision in the game.
Oh, and that I feel like okay, I'll just talk about it now. I feel like that's the very evident when you go through the house, and that for me was why it still is number 2. It could end up going lower, but I love Stranger Things so much, that I love the feeling of being in that show, and I do feel like it pulls you in like that. However, I feel like when this originally was coming out, season 3 started 4th of July, so we didn't know what it was going to look like or do, and it feels like they basically like, here you go, you can look at a little bit of the show ahead of time, but we can't show you all this stuff, because I feel like it did such a wonderful job of showing season 2, where I think it could have just not had the season 3 stuff in there and done a better version of season 2, where it could have been Bob running through the hallways, or us through the hallways of that, I forget what the building's called, where all the demodogs are coming out, and that's ultimately where the Bob meets his end, and I think we could have been in the tunnels with Hopper a lot more, because there were some cool scares there with the flamethrower, and I think we could have seen more of the tentacles maybe like going out, or like a hallway where like a lot more stuff was like hanging and touching you, and something like that, or the pumpkin patch or something. But they did such a great job with this. And then the cabin looked great. Yes, the Mind Flayer part looked great. But then Billy's not in this house at all. He's in one part, and it's before he's even. I thought 100% we were going to see Billy with all the black lines and the goo and everything on him or something like that. We saw 1 Billy, and it's before Billy is even turned bad in the first episode, and that was it. And that's where I was like, I felt like this house did a disservice to season 3. I think it could have... It did so much more with season 2 than what I guess we had expected, that then it did the opposite with season 3. It did a lot less than I thought it was going to do. It also felt a lot shorter than I expected it to be.
It's a long one, but I think it is because it's so heavy on 2 and then short on 3 at the end that it feels like it's shorter.
Yeah,
because
I think maybe it's a mental thing.
Yeah, and I have no knowledge on this whatsoever, but something to me says like, okay, Netflix came to them and said, okay, well, yeah, the deal's still on and stuff. We really want you to put 3 into, and we want you to merchandise the hell out of it. So we're going to send you a million scoops of Hoy hats.
Do you know what we didn't even see was we didn't even get into the Russian base, really. Yeah. Like we didn't, it would have been cool to see that giant generator spinning around at some point, or Hopper like getting beat up or something, a little bit more like Hopper came out at our media event in his shirt and everything. I saw him for a second in that shirt in the house. I don't even think I saw him. I think it was in your video.
No, yeah, and he is standing in the back, and you do see him once, and he references Alexei during that moment.
Yeah.
But you don't see Alexei.
So. And I heard that in your video because I didn't see it going through. And that's where I was like, I was a little disappointed with that stuff because I thought those could have made some really cool rooms. I don't know.
So that's why it's so low on my list, and still high on Ryno's, despite the fact that he has qualms with it, and I think he aired his qualms very well.
Yes, yeah. So I won't have anything really to say about it.
But the only thing I would say, with the amount of qualms that you aired with it, it should be lower on your list than where it is.
But you know what? It's one of those houses where if you said to me you can go through this every single night, I would still go through it every single night. I get
it. You're the reason why Universal Halloween Horror Nights is an IP machine, is because of you. So there you go. But what's your number 6?
1, 2, 3, 4,
5, 6.
Graveyard games.
Oh.
Yeah, I do. Like I said, most of my list is positive. There aren't really things. It's just a matter of like what I would, if you said you have one more time to go to this event, what do you need to do? So Graveyard Games I thought was pretty good. It reminded me a lot of the Poltergeist when you're going through the graveyard, through the pool in the beginning. And I thought it was a really cool original IP. I enjoyed the scares in the house. I will say this overall, I feel like there's not as many like cool creative scares this year. There's nobody flying around this year on a bungee cord or anything like that. Remember the witch last year, or they do that thing where they would jump forward? Yeah,
they do have in this house, they have one section where it's not an actual actor, but
something comes forward.
Yeah, there is a...
And I remember, and I was like, oh, cool. Like, I enjoyed this one, and I will say, I meant to say it about Stranger Things. What was really interesting about Stranger Things is that there's a lot of really big rooms in it, and they still managed to do a lot in those big rooms. Graveyard Games is the opposite. It's very tight the whole way through, and I think that really adds to a really cool feel.
I am not going to share too much on it because I have it much higher on my list, but ultimately, I will say the one thing that I am glad is you just mentioned that there aren't any of those big epic like flying moments or anything. I'm glad that they actually cut that out of this house. Not this house in general.
Well, this is where I think I would have seen it. It's like a ghost coming out of the ground or something.
The problem is they always struggle. Once people find out about these moments where they're flying or bungeeing, people just stop. And
that's true. That happened a lot in the houses before.
And anytime they had that effect, it's great. It's awesome when you time it right. But there's that idiot who knows that it's going to happen, so they either catch the end of it and they want to see it happen, or they just watched a video and knew it happened, and they just stop, and that ruins the entire house for everyone. And I know the team members inside these houses work so hard; they have to try to keep that line moving, and sometimes they're screaming their heads off, but it's sometimes you just can't stop a person who's just being plain ignorant and just doesn't care. But my number 6 I have as Yeti, Terror of the Yukon. So like I already mentioned when Ryno talked about it the first time around, I wasn't super blown away, but then next time around I was able to take in so much more of the scenery, and for that alone, like this to me had the same level of intensity in terms of a scenery as like Lightning Gulch did a couple years back, and even Bayou of Blood, even though I necessarily didn't
which one
love
did you
that
say
house.
right now?
Yeti.
Oh, okay, Yeti. Okay,
Yeti.
sorry, I heard you say something else. Go ahead. Yeah.
No, I was saying the details of that house put together reminded me a lot of Bayou of Blood, and
I
it
could see
reminded
that.
me of Lightning Gulch from a few years back. It was one of those originals that in terms of set design, I think this was the set design house where they wanted to nail it, and I think they did. And so it's
I got to go through it again.
yeah, and to me now we're getting into the part like with Stranger Things, with House of a Thousand Corpses, with Yeti, with even I'll throw in Us to an extent. Like I'm happy doing these, but I'm going to be very moderate about what the wait time is. Like with these, I'm like talking if it's more than 30 minutes, I'm a solid no on them. From here, and even with my number 5, and then it'll change a little bit. I'd be a little bit more patient as we go up the list. But what's your number 5?
So my number 5 is Depths of Fear. I remember. I mean, I guess this was kind of around that area, but I remember going through and being like, "Oh, this was a little different than what I expected," and I thought it was cool. I know there's a big issue right now because it has a dog that doesn't make it through it, I don't think. But I went through this one twice, and I have not seen that dog. But my friend went through once, and he was like, "Oh, did you see the dog bowl?" And I was like, "No." And then he talks about there's a dog that's like stuck in one of the doors at one point or something. But I don't, you said it before. People have a big issue with this, but also there was a dead horse apparently in the other house, and like there's a person that's cut in half, hanging from chains with intestines coming out, and like I took it like. And what my friend who saw this, who when he walked out, he was like, "Oh, you know what this house reminds me of? Alien." And I was like, "Oh yeah, 100%." Like trapped in a ship, and there's a monster on the loose, and it's kind of spreading and stuff. And so I thought it was, I thought it was cool. I liked it because it's an aesthetic that I haven't really seen in the last couple of years at all either.
Yeah.
So it was kind of an interesting change of pace. I thought they did a good job with like the different areas of the ship that you went through.
Well, and they're never going to get the rights to use Alien ever again at
Why?
these events. 20th Century Fox.
Oh yeah, yeah. I didn't even think of that.
If they can't get Warner Brothers to play a game with them,
Yeah.
they're going to have an uphill battle with anything that is with Fox related
that's a good
properties.
point, yeah.
So I also had Depths of Fear at number 5, and I don't want to go on too long about the whole dog debate and stuff. It's to me, like Ryno has already alluded to, I don't think they should change it. The fact is, I understand some people. There are some people in life, which is weird, that they actually are more passionate and care more about pets
I
and
am one of those people,
animals. And yeah, and you could be one of you.
No, I am. I like dog. I care much more about what happens to a stray dog than I do a stranger, and I am terrible for that probably. But
And I understand that. I'm not disrespecting anyone that feels that way. I don't think it's right to bully anyone for their thoughts one way or another on this. All I can say is that my stance is I would rather them just leave it in the house because it's
part of the horror.
But it's just one of those things like I could understand that everyone has something different going on that you never know how it will impact them. We have people, I apologize, I can't remember the name. We have one listener who has been with us for years, very supportive, and unfortunately she does not like to be in situations where there's any hanging of anything.
Yeah, I remember that, yeah.
And likes to know about this ahead of time so she can avoid it due to past issues. And so that's something like, Halloween Horror Nights still almost puts something hanging related in every single year, yet there's probably so many parents and families and friends that have been affected by people who have ultimately taken their lives by hanging, but yet it still gets included in events. There's been in the past where there's, it's like there was the one baby house, the dead baby and stuff.
The
and
vampire house last year had or 2 years ago. I don't know when it was, but But the thing is too, I say it reminds me of Alien. It reminds me of Alien too because that dog dies in the beginning of Alien 3, and it's like, that's graphic. And I don't like seeing that when it happens in movies. And you know what? I'm just going to not look at it when I go through the house. I think you're making a very compassionate point, though, about not knowing what everybody goes through.
Yeah, so it's a tough part. I understand that people are upset about it, and that's why I will never tell them they're wrong. And I won't even tell them they're wrong for saying to Universal, we don't want to see this. But if Universal starts stripping out everything that anyone has an issue with, then it does get to the point where you have to say, well, what's this event going to become? Is it going to become just a bunch of Ghostbuster houses where nothing really happens?
I think it's harder too because it's based in an original property, so maybe it feels a little closer than like if it was like the movie. Yeah. They're like, oh, well, they're adapting a movie, and yes, we chose to adapt this movie, which means we adapt these scenes. But it's different when like Universal wrote the movie. I guess.
I get that. It's saying like, okay, well, they didn't have to put that in there.
Some
it was
set
an
decorator
story.
chose to do this.
I do get that, but for me, Depths of Fear. People can knock the goofy fish that are inside of here all day. I think they're hilarious. So, like,
I got scared.
Yeah, they are scary, giant piranha.
Well, and what did you say? They go through different stages too of larva, like because there's the one that's like it's supposed to be infecting people and then they become it, right?
Yeah.
Is that what it is? Yeah. And so like there's the people when they start getting infected, and then there's the second stage because then when they're the big full grown ones, those are funny, but then like. Not funny. They scare me. But it's funny that I'm getting scared of this giant rubber fish suit. But
yeah, to me, it's like that. There's still those moments where they can really scare the crap out of you in this house, and at the same time, there is a funny element to it. And I like that it really is like the goal is to get out of this house in 4 minutes, just like you're escaping from this underwater place. And so,
wait, is that a goal?
Yeah. I mean, it's kind of the thing. It's like the countdown's on. You've got to get out of this house.
Oh, I didn't know that. I did not know that part. How do I know that?
Because they told us.
In?
Yeah.
Oh,
they told us during our tour. Yeah.
Well, and when I went through the second time, I walked through a part that we didn't walk through. The first part when you walk in, they didn't take us in that way, so I missed that whole like entryway that I thought was kind of cool.
Yeah, we went in the back part, and there are a couple moments where it says like there is a countdown moving on, like countdown to whatever.
Oh, I have to watch for that next time.
Yeah, so I like it. It's one of those ones where it's like it's definitely.
I do like a countdown.
It's right in the middle of the road for me, so I enjoy it enough that I'll do it more times, but also not my favorite, but. Okay, Ryno, what's 4?
I have Us here because when we went through that house that first time, I remember being like, pleasantly surprised with what it was going to offer. I know it was a lot lower when I first did it, and after you've talked about it a little bit more, if my experience had been your experience, it would be lower for me. But I see this as having even more potential as we go along. So this is definitely one that will shift on my list and probably downward. I don't even mean that in a negative way. I just mean like I think a lot of these have opportunities to come up, but I kind of saw the things that I thought I was going to see, and I was like, oh yeah, I forgot like this part, and I liked being in the house and hearing the music, and I really do like the finale scene when you're down below in that not warehouse, I don't know what you call it, like where all the untethered live, and all the bunnies are on the ground, and whoever the people are that are playing Red and Lupita Nyong'o's like her regular version, they're great. Yep. Like they're moving and around and creepy, and it's kind of creepy just to see that. So I'm hoping this house just gets a lot more scares in it. But I have it up there. That was just based on my initial going through. So
I respect it. And you were a big fan of the movie, so
yeah, I did.
The second
really like
time
the
you
movie.
saw it. So my number 4 is Killer Clowns from Outer Space. So I think I had a stellar run through the very first time when we were there on the media night, and then like I said, my second time through wasn't that bad.
Clownzilla wasn't working the second time I went through. I just remembered that I got a text while we were here, and it was my friend who was like, "Oh, the clown was working this time," and I got scared while I was looking up by another clown, and I was like, "Oh yeah, it wasn't working. It was there. It just wasn't moving."
Yeah, and I think that's part of this house too. Like you mentioned with mannequins, is that a lot of times, like when there's a mannequin in a normal house, you look at it and like, okay, well, clearly that's not real. With the clowns, they all have perfected the art. The ones who aren't hidden in their cubbies, the ones who are standing out in the open have perfected the art of standing as still as possible, and they don't move. So when they finally do, I don't care. It's like it gets you every time.
And I think that I love that room where you go through and they're all in there, and you're like, oh dear God. I don't know. I'm like, I think there's somebody in every one of the suits in there.
Yeah.
I don't think they're all I don't think there's a single mannequin, to be honest with you. I don't know.
I think there might be one, or maybe even two, but I don't. It doesn't.
But I like that.
Change.
I like that repeat.
Yeah, because how zany these creatures are, these alien clowns, like because they just look so fake even when they're in the suits. When there's the mannequins, not moving ones, it looks the exact same because it's all just put together like that. It's fun, and I love the movie, so this is one that ran a little higher for me. But number 3,
Monsters. Universal Monsters. I liked this one quite a bit. I liked there were monsters in there I guess I didn't really expect to see. I didn't think I'd see like the Hunchback. And I forgot there was another one too that I was like, oh, cool. And I thought there were a lot of really good scares, but I liked it for the same way that I liked Scary Tales from last year. I liked how each room was kind of its own little story, but then it kind of like it went through. The story went through the whole thing too, so it was one of those where I really wanted to do this one again the second night, but it like the wait time just kept going up and down so drastically.
Yeah, and I've been lucky both times I went through. The only scare I think I've actually missed was the Bride of Frankenstein in the Frankenstein scene, but
I think I encountered that on the first night.
It was just slightly ahead of me, so I saw her, but she was going back in. I got her when we were finally leaving, because one of the things I love about this house is at the very end they do the recap and they have 5 more scares with monsters you have already seen. So like the Wolfman pops back out, and then the Phantom pops out, I think, and then it's Bride of Frankenstein, and then you get right at the end you think you're safe, and then Frankenstein pops out right before you get through the door. But like, yeah, it hits all the monsters. It's close enough on my list. We're at the end here. So this was number 2 for me. I was lucky that I had stellar run-throughs both times, that it has to be this high on my list. Plus, my love of classic monsters. I think my favorite section, despite my love of Frankenstein, I love the Creature from the Black Lagoon section.
Oh, that was the other one. I mean, I knew that was going to be in there, but I kind of forgot, And so when we get into that area, I was like, oh, underwater.
And it's so basic. Yeah. It's like, it's this super fake underwater scene, and there's just 2 cubbies with him. But it's the creature like you want to see the creature.
Yeah. I think it did a good job of somebody who could have never seen these movies too could still really enjoy the house.
Yeah, and there are weak moments. Like Quasimodo just stands there hanging out on his bell and is just there as a set piece. Wolfman's pretty intense.
I like the Wolfman.
And the Invisible Man's throughout the house the entire time. But to me, it's pretty solid. My number 3 was actually Ghostbusters.
Oh.
And this was definitely one of our most hyped houses going into the event, and I think it has delivered on pretty much everything I could have hoped for and more. And it's a stellar house. It really is an amazing house. It is a love letter to Ghostbusters without being over the top. I think they made it. There's been more faithful intellectual property houses. Like I feel like Halloween and The Shining were just, to me, I felt more transported in the movie than Ghostbusters. But ultimately, like the Slimer effect with him coming down the hallway and then shooting in the door, like that is so cool. That and then be followed up by Slimer attacking you.
Yeah.
I was hoping for Rick Moranis, and of course we got that scene played out entirely.
My Dana scene, the next night I came through, she wasn't there. And I was like, oh no, Dana's not here. And she walked past the window to go get up on the thing, and she's like, there is no Dana, only Zool. Okay. And I was like, ooh, whoa, because that was
Yeah.
like different than the part we saw before. So it was like,
You were in the
I don't
middle
know
of
if
a
she
set
like
change.
goes up. Yeah,
Yeah.
but it was cool because it was like just the right timing. And I was
Yeah.
like, ooh.
Yeah, that's cool. But like I love that they included everything that I was really hoping for, plus a little bit more because they added in some stuff from 2, and they said they added in
There's a ghost from every Ghostbusters movie
yes,
in this, including
exactly.
the 2021.
Yeah, so I like that, and a little disappointed that Stave Puft Marshmallow Man couldn't have been given the same type of love as the Mind
yeah.
Flare and Clownzilla,
Because
but
they made such a big deal about being like, yes, even the Stay Puff. And I was like, well, I mean, he's there, but it's like, it's a screen.
Yeah.
And you're like, I wish you could have inflated him. Of all the things to have built, I think he would have been the easiest. That's
Yeah.
the weirdest part. You can literally buy him for your front lawn at Home Depot.
yes, I agree with that. And so it nailed everything, but for me, it wasn't, I think there are a couple actual genuinely scary moments when they catch you. Like when the first Slimer attack, he can get you.
Yeah.
The in the library scene.
Yeah, that was good. The library scene.
Yeah.
The terror dogs, I think, were
Yeah.
pretty good too. I think they like happen at the right moments and
Yes.
stuff. And yeah.
Yeah, there's a couple moments where I think they actually can get you mixed with the fun I love Ghostbusters side of it, but to me it's with intellectual properties, I feel like it's just this one couldn't hit some of the other ones that they've done, and I think that's just solely because they've had such a good string of like they have done amazingly well at bringing some of these intellectual properties to life that eventually there is going to be like, oh, I have to compare this IP to the last IP that they did to the last one to the last one, and Ghostbusters just didn't overcome some of those other ones, but it is still a solid house. It's one that if I can wait 45 minutes or less for it every single time I'm there, I'm down. I'd probably, if with a first timer, I'd even wait an hour for it.
Yeah.
So,
I think when I did the Stay and Scream, it was probably about 40 minutes.
Yeah.
And I was like pretty early into getting in there, so.
I think it's if you're coming and you admit to yourself like, oh, I'm coming on a busy night, I can only do so much, I can't get Express, I can't do Stay and Scream, to me, Ghostbusters is a not to be missed house. If you think you can only do 5 houses the entire night, I'm not saying there's anything right or wrong with any list, but I think definitively we could say that Ghostbusters has to be seen at the event. But what was your number 2?
Stranger Things. Mm-hmm. But we already talked about it enough. I enjoy it. I do wish maybe it had just been season 2, but I can see why they did 3. It's a shame because it makes me think we won't have a season 3 next year.
So
for this bet.
That means we also know your number 1.
Well, my number 1 is Ghostbusters, and I'll tell you, it is for all the reasons you said, and I also thought it was a great example of what a permanent Halloween Horror Nights house could be for Universal Orlando. That if they could keep this around, I think it's just the right amount of fun, scary, that it encapsulates, whatever that word is. It really has that spirit of the film in the house, because the film is a funny movie, but it also has scary elements to it. Like, it treads that line really nicely. And it's like that for me is something I had emotional reaction when I was done. But this is like, I've said that Ghostbusters was very important to me growing up. Like I was obsessed with it when I was younger. And it's one of those things where I just feel like it's got all those moments that you want and more, and it was for the first time where I was like, I literally just walked through the spirit of this film, and it's something that if you are too afraid of like these horror nights house or a haunted house, you could still get through this, I think. And that's why this is one of those things where I want to almost be like, can you please just leave this one house here all year? Every year I think it would be cool if they just left one for the year and then like swapped out whatever that one was after the year or something. But this is one that I wish more people could experience than will.
Yeah, no, that's a good point. And I will say, like, Ghostbusters is a movie I grew up with too. And it's kind of funny because like the movies that were the most impactful for me growing up were probably Star Wars, Indiana Jones, even though I didn't really get into it until later on, but like E.T. was another big one. Definitely Ghostbusters, Back to the Future. It's kind of funny in this day and age now. It's like I can. Indiana Jones, I feel like I get my needs met with that through Indiana Jones Adventure at Disneyland.
Yeah.
I mean, that could also make for an awesome Halloween Horror Nights house, but but it's translated well in that ride. E.T., yeah, I think it's translated well enough in the ride that it has. So something like Ghostbusters, even though they used to have that stage show way back in the day, this to me is like, this is bringing you into
first true representation. And you know what? You just made me think. Like I actually think it's the most dark ride. It's basically a dark ride, but a walkthrough version of
a live action dark ride.
If they had turned this into, exactly. I think if they had turned this into a ride, this experience, this would be a very popular thing that people would always do. Like, if anything, take this blueprint and turn this into a permanent dark ride. Then maybe you ride through on an Ecto-1, or something like that. And I think they finally nailed their first ever dark ride. That's their thing, I guess. I don't know. Although it's not
ET,
their property.
Please.
Yeah, I'm not knocking ET, but ET is a sequel, so it's not ET is not
okay.
So you know what I mean?
I got you.
Yeah.
So that leaves my number one, and if you're doing the math on all of that, my number one is actually Graveyard Games right now.
I know. I was counting them out, and I was like, oh, really? Okay.
It is
messaging those teenagers.
Yeah. I
combines his love of messaging underage kids with scary stuff.
Well, first off, I haven't had the opportunity to do that. This was one of the houses I was able to walk right in. And I literally would have walked right in, except the people that were in front of me were moseying along so slowly that they created a line by accident. So I just walk at a normal pace. You don't have to mosey. Anyways, though, it's like I haven't had the chance to see the whole teen aspect chatting side on there or anything, but it's so all jokes aside on that one, because we made plenty of them leading up to it. This is it's not even exactly what I hoped for in a way, because I wanted the graveyard scene and I wanted it brought into like, oh, you're a teenager going through a graveyard on a spooky, close to Halloween-ish or Halloween night, and you want to see those ghosts and stuff. And to me, it nailed this entirely. The only thing that I say took me aback from it is like, you walk in the first scene and you're in a cemetery, and there's all these small headstones, and you see this flashlight moving from far away, and you get scared right away because a guy just pops out. Yeah. And I knew he was coming, and he still scared me. He just got me perfectly and got me on a jump timing. But then you move into the actual, like, the further graveyard portion with mausoleums and stuff, and there's graffiti all over it, and you're like, oh, this is like an old rundown cemetery that people have just destroyed and disrespected. And then that adds to the story in a way too, that I feel like it's like, okay, well, no one has respected this place, and everyone who's buried there is also turning against them. So the ghosts that you're seeing in there, they are evil spirits that are truly coming after you. And it's like Ryno said, it is so compact in this maze. Yeah. There are so many moments where they are popping out of places that you don't expect and getting you. And there's a couple cool little design aspects that I like through it as well too. It's not as intricately themed as Yeti, but to me it still has a nice blend to it, and
it's definitely my house that could go up higher on my list for sure.
Yeah, it's this one. I will say it probably will not stay as number one, but right now on Sunday night alone, I liked it when we did it on media night, but then on Sunday night I walked out of it saying hands down that was like, it hit everything right. It hit everything that I expect out of a Horror Nights house. It had the scares, it had the thematic element to it. It all worked. It worked well, and I'm excited to see it could stay in my number one spot. So, but I could see, the nostalgic side of me could move Ghostbusters up. Universal Monsters could come up. I'm pretty sure my top three are pretty much going to stay the same throughout the entire time. For me, it's going to be what's down below that. It's going to shift and adjust. But I think the houses are generally solid this year. I think there's at least 5 or 6 that are like must see, and then a couple that are like, hopefully you see it and hopefully it becomes a favorite for you. But I cannot respect anyone who says Nightingales is their favorite house.
I don't know that I want to hang out with that person.
Yeah. And I'm not like, I know I sometimes say that as a joke. I genuinely don't know.
Well, I have to give it another shot, obviously. So I go through all of them again and again. Even the ones I hate, I go through.
So that was a long time on the houses here. We'll just, we're not doing a show next week anyways, because we're going to be gone. So
yeah.
Giving you a little bit of a bonus one here, a little bit more to watch. But just real quick on the scare zones, I'm not going into them because I'm not ready to rank them. I haven't spent enough time in them. But if you had to say anything about the scare zones, where would you put them?
I feel like they're forgettable this year. I feel like you know what I was realizing as we were doing the show is that I think I missed that. For the last 2 years, we've had a scare zone that had a literal Halloween aesthetic, and I feel like that's what's missing for me this year is the pumpkins and the jack-o'-lanterns, and because it was Trick or Treat, and then it was whatever the other one was called that was like 50s Trick or Treat or something like that. But I missed that. But I think for me, I like the anarch-cade one on the main strip when you come in because it wraps up it's in the theme and it does it pretty well, and it's just ridiculous.
Chainsaws,
and that's all
right
you need
away.
there. Yeah, neon chainsaws, hockey players, the stilts with the light up glasses. It's a fun photo place too. And then I thought Vanity Ball for something that I thought was kind of like whatever is interesting, but I'm with you. I haven't really experienced much more than walking through. But
yeah,
I'm not like there's not one where I'm like I gotta get back and go in it like I have the last couple of years.
Yeah, honestly, I think the standout characters of Vanity Ball, a lot of people are like putting a lot of focus on the show elements that are happening on the runway and everything with it, and they're doing their fashion show with their cosmetic changes. I think the people on the streets actually running around in their patient gowns and stuff, in botched operations and stuff, I think those are the ones who are making that scare zone anything that it is. They are going above and beyond to scare people in a setting where they also made it like, oh, this is going to be a place where you come and watch these shows happen, but they're making you distracted from the shows by keeping you scared and being around. And I think, for me, I think Zombieland is a big miss.
Oh, absolutely, 100%. I don't even understand it. I don't like it. Yeah. I don't know.
It did not hit for me. I need to spend more time there. Same thing goes with Hellbilly Deluxe. I feel like it's a miss for me because it's a bunch of show, but it's not like I didn't even take my camera out in this one yet. I did. I watched it.
I filmed this German S&M nightclub. Yeah. It was so weird.
Okay. I'll borrow some footage from you then.
Oh, there's a girl that literally looks like looks like an SS officer, and I'm like, what the hell is going on in here?
Yeah, tough on that. But then beyond that, then I like Vikings Undead. It's not a lot, and I know this is a hard one because usually you like that Halloween spirit in that Central Park section. I think Vikings Undead is still, it's foggy. There's people on stilts. There's a bunch of burly, husky people running around trying to scare you in the darkness. So I feel like as a scare zone,
sounds like a Saturday night. Am I right?
Mr. Saturday Night Special there, baby. Anyways, just wrapping up my thoughts on that too. Scare zones are okay. There's nothing amazing this year, in my opinion. Academy of Villains happened this year, and it's definitely a return to form for the show in a way. I think it's probably the best show they've had since the first one, but nothing is still clicking for me with it. I don't like the setup of watching it in a theater style. It's in the Fear Factor live stage, and it just feels like, even though now I feel like they listened to some feedback and they have tried to bring the acts closer to the audience, and very close in some circumstances, but at the same time too, it just missed everything about the first show that made it so cool watching it up front and close. It's just, you're watching a performance, and it gets old quick. But and I also don't. It's kind of a blend. In years past, like they're bringing in elements from all the shows, and then one special one there. So like the first section is, I think the first section was the person kicking the ball, which that kind of got old. Yeah, there was a guy who came out.
Yeah. Completely forgot about that part.
And that was just kind of like, oh, it's there. And I think that led back to the first year. There was one of the actors, or not one of the not actors, performers. One of the performers could do tricks with a ball, and then they had the contortionist come out, which I hate.
I hate it.
Yeah.
I hate it. Ugh.
I didn't care for it when they did it the second year. I still don't care for it now. Then they also have a one of the ribbon dancers that
Ribbon dancer.
I don't know what they're called. I don't want it. Ribbon dancer sounds like you're on the ground flapping a ribbon around. It's one of the ones that hangs onto the two sheets and twists around in the air and stuff. It's an aerialist of sorts.
Yeah.
I don't know if there's an exact name.
I think it's like, my gosh, my friend does it, and it's literally like on the tip of my tongue, but it involves aerial.
Yeah, and that was okay to watch. I thought it was fresh and fun and different with their show. And then the final section of it is a throwback to the sheets that they did the very first year with. They backlight everything, so you're watching shadows move around and stuff, and that was a huge part of the first year show. One of the best elements of that, and they took it to the next level with this one, with 3 different screens and moving in and out, and it's a cool element, but it's also, again, when you're watching it from further back, it just doesn't captivate me as much as.
I think the show thematically fits better this year. I mean, with its theming of like looking like Frankenstein's monster and that sort of stuff. But it's still one of those where I agree with you. I think when it's like they come through the crowd and go up onto into an area and they're performing right there, it's kind of something I don't want to wait and go sit in forever. I want to like watch it and move on.
Yeah.
And so it's kind of like it's in an area where it's still not as good as the thing that was there before.
I'm happier standing and watching the shows, even though I never moved on like the first year of it, and even the second year, I pretty much watched it all the way through.
You can't get through. I can't leave halfway. I can't watch a little bit of it and be like, oh, I just want to see a little bit of dance, and then go.
You also can't show up halfway through and be like, oh, I really like this. I want to
come and watch the whole thing.
Exactly.
Yeah.
It kind of ruins that for it, and then. We've been lucky enough that I've always been able to watch it from close when I watch it in that theater. I can't imagine being in like the back row in the very far back corner. It's got to be a boring show to watch from that angle. It's got to just
something's
like,
better than nothing, but I still wish there was some sort of like a variety show or something like that. I don't know.
But something is better than nothing in this case, and that's Marathon of Mayhem, the Fountain Lagoon show.
That thing is worth the admission to go to this alone. I think they knocked it out of the park with this. It is incredible. I watched it again the other night, and I am in love with it. I want the soundtrack. Universal Orlando didn't understand that's what I was asking for. They were like, we sell the sound. You might want to visit the tribute store for all tracks to all shows. And I was like, okay, you didn't answer my question, but thanks. But I think every section of this is amazing. I love the whole thing.
I agree. Yeah, no, it's perfect. It's exactly what they put on paper. It is the Fountain Lagoon show, like an 80s mashup of you're watching all these horror elements in one night, and it includes the ones they said it did: Stranger Things, Ghostbusters, Universal Monsters, and Killer Clowns from Outer Space. And that.
I love how it like starts in black and white with the monsters too, and then it turns into this like neon thing, and then Stranger Things dissolves into this like 8-bit video game kind of a thing, and when they zap Stay Puft too. I love that. I love that part.
And they just like the regular Fountain Lagoon show, they utilize the buildings behind them. There's tons of effects with it. No fireworks, but that's fine. It doesn't. Fireworks would take away from it.
Honestly, I didn't even think it needed them.
Yeah.
There was a part where I was like, oh, they're going to be fireworks here, but then they do this really amazing. Like the fountains go like 3 times as high as you've seen them go earlier in the show, and it's going crazy, and the colors and the music and everything, and I'm like, oh no, this is great.
Yep, I think it's definitely one of the things about this year's event that's not to be missed, and the best part is I can't say how busy it's going to get moving forward, but the first night that we saw it, I would say you could have shown up.
Oh yeah, I think you could have walked up.
Were we at the 11 show for that or 12 o'clock? 12 o'clock.
I think 12 because they thought it was 11:30, so we were just standing there for 30 minutes or something. But.
You could have showed up and had a perfect spot for the 12 o'clock show. I watched the 12 o'clock show both nights that I went, and you could have shown up within 2 minutes of the show and still had a great spot.
The 10 o'clock show, I watched the first show the first night I went, and that was pretty busy.
Okay.
So you could still come up, but I mean, I got there like 20 minutes before, but it was kind of like, if you want like the best view, I'd probably give yourself about 20 minutes. But
yeah, that's what I was going to say too. 20 minutes, 30 max.
The big tip here, though, is I think the first show might be the busiest one. So
Yeah.
I think wait for those later shows and go do some of the houses, because we noticed right when we were leaving, a lot of the houses had dropped a little bit in the wait. So
yeah, no, that's definitely good to know, and hopefully we'll be able to talk more in the coming weeks about strategies with that as well too. But that's it for this one. That's all we have for you. I know it's a
short episode.
Yeah, short 95-minute episode there. But like I said, we didn't have an episode last week, and we won't have an episode next week. We're going to be in California, and I know the number one thing you're going to ask, well, are you going to Halloween Horror Nights in Hollywood while you're out there? And it's unless something crazy happens and we end up there for some reason, the answer is going to be no. It's something that we would have to put our own money down on. And after our last experience there and hearing more friends talk about how they did it last year, I'm better off leaving and saying, no, I did not spend my money on it, and that was a mistake. I would rather do that than drop way too much money for a pass with Express or whatever they call it there, front of the line. I would rather not spend the money at all and be fine if I missed out on something great, rather than spend the money and then regret every little bit of it when I could have spent it in other areas and locations. So don't think we're doing anything with that. Like I said, it's whatever. Things can happen. Things can change. For all we know, we could end up being involved in it for some reason and have a chance to see it. But yeah, normally when we would record, we won't be back here to do that. So we're actually not going to be back until late the night of the night before the show gets released. So no episode for you. So I apologize for that, but re-listen to this one and watch whatever we're putting out from California. That's fun too. But okay, thank you so much to everyone for watching and listening to this. And Ryno, thank you so much for being a part of it.
Thank you.
And no questions today, but we will be back with you in 2 weeks for another episode of the Diz Unplugged Universal Edition. But until then, remember, we still have not changed the name.